Hey, where do you think you're going?
Inside, I live here.
You live here?
Yes, I live here. What's the problem?
Ma'am, I got a call. Somebody trying to break into this property.
There's no break-in. I have a remote. This is my house.
Well, I'm gonna need you to step back while we sort this out.
He wasn't listening to her. He was never going to listen to her. He had pulled up, seen her standing there, and the decision was already made. Before she spoke, before she moved, before she even turned around, 9 years on the force, 3 prior complaints, all closed, all buried, and not once, not a single time, had it ever gone wrong for him until today. Because the woman he just stopped at her own gate, on her own property, in front of her own home, was not who he thought she was. She was not someone he could dismiss. She was not someone he could intimidate. She was not someone who was going to let this go. And right now, while he stands there, certain, composed, completely sure of himself, he has absolutely no idea what is already coming for him. Watch this one to the end, because the moment he finds out who she really is a moment you will not see coming. Subscribe now, and don't move. This is just the beginning. It didn't start at the gate. It started with a phone call.
Hi, yes. I need to report something. There's a woman outside on Hawthorne Lane. She's at the gate with some kind of device. I don't know what she's doing, but she doesn't look like she belongs there.
Can you describe the situation, ma'am?
I mean, nobody that lives on this street looks like her. It just doesn't seem right.
We'll send someone out now, thank you.
That was it. No crime, no forced entry, no threat, just a woman standing at a gate and a neighbor who decided, without a single fact, that something was wrong. The call lasted 43 seconds. 43 seconds to reduce a woman's entire existence to a suspicion, and somewhere across town, a radio crackled.
Unit 4, suspicious female. Hawthorne Lane. Possibly attempting unauthorized access to a residential property.
Suspicious. That was the word that traveled through the radio, into a patrol car, and into the mind of a man already looking for a reason. Not a fact, not evidence, just a word. Chosen by a neighbor, who looked out of her window, saw a woman standing at a gate, and decided that was enough. That one word, suspicious. It was about to follow Lauren Bishop for the rest of that evening, through a detention she didn't deserve, through a humiliation she never earned, and all the way to a courtroom where that same word would be the first thing the prosecution dismantled. But right now, none of that had happened yet. Right now, it was just a word, floating through the air on Hawthorne Lane, and Lauren Bishop was still standing at her gate, completely unaware that 43 seconds had just changed her entire evening. The neighbor had already gone back inside, curtain closed, phone down, certain she had done the right thing. She had no idea what she had just started. He turned onto Hawthorne Lane at 6:16 p.m., lights on, no sirens, the kind of arrival that says this is already decided. He parked just short of the gate, stepped out slowly, one hand resting on his belt, eyes already moving, not scanning, settling on her. She hadn't moved, hadn't flinched, hadn't turned away, just standing there, exactly where she had always been, at her own gate, remote in one hand, keys in the other. He walked toward her, not fast, not slow, the walk of someone who has never once been wrong. She watched him come, still, composed, the way someone stands when they have nothing to hide. His eyes moved past her, to the house, to the driveway, then back to her. That look lasted less than 2 seconds, but it carried everything his mouth hadn't said yet. When she noticed, said nothing, he stopped, 3 feet between them, close enough to be deliberate, far enough to look controlled. The street was quiet, nobody watching, nobody recording, just the two of them, and a gate that belonged to her. He straightened, chin up, shoulders back, the posture of someone about to make something official, and then, for the first time that evening, assumption became something else, something harder, something that couldn't be walked back. He opened his mouth, and what came out of it wasn't a question. It was never going to be a question. It was a command. and the moment it left his lips, this stopped being a misunderstanding. Lauren Bishop heard it, stood completely still, and made a decision of her own. She wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't alone for long. The second cruiser arrived quietly. No lights, no urgency, just another car rolling to a stop behind the first. Officer Marcus Webb stepped out. Younger than Reeves, fewer years, fewer complaints. He took in the scene slowly. The gate, the woman. Reeves standing 3 feet away from someone who hadn't moved. Something about it made him pause. Not long, just a beat. The kind of pause that happens when what you're looking at doesn't match what you were expecting. He walked over. Cut dialogue. 3 words. We're past that, past verification, past evidence, past the one moment that could have stopped everything before it became something else. Webb stood there, the doubt still visible on his face. He knew. In that moment, he absolutely knew. But knowing and doing are 2 completely different things. And Webb, for all his hesitation, for all his moral clarity in that single moment, said nothing more, stepped back, and let it continue. That silence was its own decision, not as loud as Reeves, not as visible, but just as real. Lauren watched Webb step back. She had seen that look before, that moment where someone recognizes the wrong, reaches toward the right, and pulls their hand back. She didn't appeal to him, didn't flinch, didn't say another word, because she already understood something neither of them had figured out yet. Nobody standing on that street was going to end this. So she did something that looked like surrender, but wasn't. She got very, very quiet and started paying attention to everything. Badge numbers, names, timestamps, every word, every movement, every decision being made in plain sight. While they thought they were in control, she was already 3 steps ahead, and neither of them had any idea. Something was shifting on that street, quietly, invisibly. In a way, neither of them was announcing. Reeves was talking more now, commands coming faster, each one sharper than the last, the tone of a man who expects volume alone to settle things. Lauren wasn't matching it, wasn't rising to meet it, wasn't retreating from it either. She was doing something far more unsettling. She was listening, the way someone listens when every word being said to them is being filed away, cataloged, stored. Reeves told her she was being detained. She asked what grounds. Reeves said suspicious activity. She asked him to specify. Reeves said she was interfering with an investigation. She noted calmly there was no investigation prior to his arrival. Every time he pushed, she didn't push back. She asked a question. Precise, calm, surgical. The kind of questions that don't sound like challenges, but land like them. Reeves heard defiance. What he was actually hearing was documentation. She wasn't arguing. She was building a record, out loud, in plain sight, every word chosen deliberately. No emotional language, no raised voice, no desperation creeping through the edges, just clarity. The kind that doesn't come from anger, it comes from training, from years of understanding exactly how moments like this work, exactly what gets said, exactly what gets used later. Reeves kept his eyes on her face, looking for the crack. The moment composure slipped, the moment she became what he had already decided she was, it never came. And that bothered him more than anything she said. Because he had done this before, stood in front of people, used the weight of the badge, the uniform, the authority of the moment, and watched them fold. She wasn't folding, she wasn't even bending, standing at her own gate, speaking in complete sentences, while he grew louder, and somehow, without raising her voice once, without moving an inch, she was making him look small. He didn't understand how. He wouldn't understand until it was far too late. There was something in her stillness that went beyond composure, beyond the instinct to stay calm under pressure. It was precision, the kind that has an origin, a source, something that had been built and sharpened over years. Her eyes never left his face, not with fear, but with focus. The kind of focus that only makes complete sense when you know exactly who was standing at that gate and what she did every single day for a living. Then something unexpected happened. Reeves stopped, not because he had changed his mind, But because Lauren had said something, he couldn't entirely dismiss. She had asked him, calmly, precisely, to verify the address. Just that. Verify it. And for the first time, since he turned onto Hawthorne Lane, he paused. Not long. Just enough. He looked at the gate, then at her, then back at the gate, and gave a single nod. Open it. Lauren didn't hesitate, didn't make a show of it. She simply raised the remote, pressed it once, and stepped back. The gate clicked and began to slide open. Slowly, the driveway came into view first, then the path leading to the front door, then the house itself, exactly as she had described it, exactly where she said it would be, every detail aligning with every word she had spoken. Since the moment he arrived, the air shifted. Something in the tension began to loosen. Webb exhaled somewhere. Behind Reeves, Lauren stood perfectly still, watching the gate finish opening. Patient, unhurried, the way someone stands when they have just been proven right and don't need to say it out loud. For a moment, just a brief, suspended moment, it looked like this was over. The kind of moment that should have ended everything. Gate open, house visible, truth confirmed. All Reeves had to do was take one step back, acknowledge what was right in front of him, and walk away. The exit was there, wide open, just like the gate. The street was quiet. The evening light was fading. Lauren waited, and the audience, without realizing it, had started to breathe again. That was the mistake. Not hers. Theirs. Because Reeves wasn't looking at the driveway. He wasn't looking at the house. He was looking at her. And something had changed. Behind his eyes. Not doubt. Not recognition. Something else. Something that had nothing to do with evidence, or verification, or the gate now standing fully open. Behind her, his jaw tightened. One small movement. Easy to miss. But it was there. And Lauren saw it. Before anyone else did. Before Webb noticed. Before the street understood what was about to happen. She saw it. And in that fraction of a second, she knew this wasn't over. It hadn't even reached its worst moment yet. The gate stood fully open. Everything Lauren had said, from the moment Reeves arrived, confirmed, visible, undeniable. He looked at it, then turned back to her. And that was the moment, the one that split everything into before and after. Because what came next had nothing to do with the call, the neighbor, or anything that had brought him to Hawthorne Lane. What came next was a choice. Pure, deliberate, entirely his own. One word left his mouth. Stop. Not directed at a crime, not at a threat, at a woman, standing at her own gate, with everything she had claimed, now confirmed behind her. Lauren didn't flinch, didn't pull away, didn't give him a single thing he could use later. She just looked at him, the way someone looks when they are memorizing every detail of what is being done to them. Reeves moved toward her. The measured walk was gone. This was different, faster, committed, past the point where doubt could slow it down. He reached for her arm. Webb stood frozen behind him, mouth closed, eyes wide, watching something he knew was wrong, and choosing, again, to say nothing. Reeves turned her, pressed her against her own car, and reached for his cuffs. She didn't struggle, didn't argue, didn't break. She did one thing. She looked directly at his badge. Once, slowly, the way someone looks when they are done collecting everything they need. And then, the cuffs clicked shut. One sound. Small, sharp, permanent. Behind them, the gate remained open, confirming everything. And in that confirmation, in that open gate, and those closed cuffs, a clock had started, counting down to something Reeves had no idea was coming. He had just made the most expensive decision of his entire life, and he was still smiling. The street had been quiet until that moment. No witnesses, no cameras, nothing beyond 2 officers, and a woman standing at her own gate, in handcuffs. Then a door opened. Across the street, a neighbor stepping onto her porch. She stopped the moment she saw it, glass still in her hand, eyes moving slowly across the scene. The open gate, the cruisers. Lauren pressed against her own car, hands behind her back. The neighbor didn't speak, didn't move, just stared. The way people stare when what they're seeing refuses to make sense. Then her hand moved, slowly, into her pocket, and her phone rose, quietly, without announcement, pointed directly at the scene. Reeves hadn't noticed. He was still talking, still certain, still positioned. With his back to the street, another door opened. Further down, a man this time. Then a woman from the house, directly next door. Then someone who had been walking their dog, and simply stopped. One by one, the street was filling, with eyes, with phones, with people who were watching something they all recognized, even if they couldn't immediately name it. Lauren saw every single one of them, registered each phone, the moment it rose, each face, the moment it appeared. She didn't call out to them, didn't appeal, didn't show a single thing on her face that could be used against her. She just stood there, still, composed, and let them see exactly what was happening, exactly what had been done. At her own gate, in front of her own home, Reeves was still talking when the first voice came from across the street. Not loud, not aggressive, just clear enough to cut through everything. Cut for witness. 3 words, landing on a street that had gone very still. Reeves stopped, turned, and for the first time since he arrived on Hawthorne Lane, he saw what was behind him. Phones, faces, eyes that had seen everything. From the moment the cruiser parked to the moment the cuffs clicked, every decision he had made was already captured, preserved, waiting, and standing in the middle of all those lenses, all those witnesses, all that undeniable, accumulating truth, was a woman who hadn't struggled, hadn't shouted, hadn't given them a single moment they could use to justify what had just been done to her. Reeves looked at the phones, then at Lauren. Something moved across his face, fast, gone almost before it arrived. But it was there, and every camera on that street caught it. He had walked onto that street in complete control, and somewhere between the first command and the last click of those cuffs, control had left him. He just hadn't felt it go, but the street had seen it, every second of it. And what happens when a man like Reeves finally understands what those cameras captured is something nobody on that street was prepared for. Something changed in Lauren Bishop the moment those cuffs closed. Not her posture, not her expression, nothing anyone standing on that street could point to. Something internal, a decision made so quietly. It produced no sound, no signal, nothing for Reeves to read. She simply stopped, not in defeat, not in resignation, but in the deliberate way a person stops when they have collected everything they need and have no further use for the conversation, Reeves was still talking, justifying, explaining what he had done, and why it was necessary. Lauren wasn't listening anymore. Not because she had given up, but because she had already moved to the next room, mentally, strategically, while her body stood at the side of that car, hands behind her back. Her mind was somewhere else entirely. 3 things locked in. The exact words Reeves used the moment he arrived. The badge number she had read the moment he stepped within reading distance. And the name of every witness still standing on that street. All of it stored perfectly. Reeves looked at her once, expecting what he usually found. In moments like this, fear, desperation, the silent plea of someone hoping compliance would soften. What came next? He found none of it. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking past him, at the street, at the neighbors still watching, at the phones still recording. Her expression completely unreadable. The face of someone who has already decided how this ends and is simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. She made one request before they put her in the car. Routine, granted without hesitation. One phone call. She dialed without looking up the number. 7 words. Then she waited. No panic, no tears, no desperation creeping through the edges. Just stillness. The kind that only makes sense when you understand exactly who she called and exactly what that one call had already set in motion. Reeves had no idea. None. And in 8 minutes, everything he thought he controlled was about to prove it. 8 minutes. That's all it took. From the moment Lauren made that call to the moment the station started feeling different. A supervisor walked through a door he didn't usually walk through at that hour. Then someone from internal affairs. Then a figure nobody at that precinct recognized. The desk officer processing Lauren's paperwork looked up, looked at the arrivals, and stopped typing. The desk officer turned to Lauren, asked her to confirm her position for the record. She looked at him, steady, unhurried, and said 4 words that changed the temperature of every room they traveled through. Assistant Attorney General, State Division. The room didn't react loudly. What moved through that station was quieter than shock. It was recognition, the cold, settling understanding of exactly what had happened on Hawthorne Lane, and exactly who had been standing at that gate. Eyes moved to Reeves, still near the far wall, arms crossed, the posture of someone who had just finished doing his job. He looked around the time, room, at the supervisor, at internal affairs, at the figure who had walked in without introduction, and for the first time in 9 years, Daniel. Reeves was no longer certain. The review began before midnight. Body cam footage pulled within the hour. Dispatch logs analyzed. 3 separate recordings secured from witnesses still standing on Hawthorne Lane when investigators arrived. Every angle, every timestamp, every word spoken on that street telling the same story. An opportunity to verify. Ignored. Evidence presented. Dismissed. Authority imposed. Without cause. And then a report filed that described none of it accurately. That last detail was what changed everything. Because Reeves hadn't just acted without cause. He had written a version of events that didn't exist. And that decision, that one final choice, was what transformed a misconduct case into something criminal. The charges came fast. Unlawful. Detention. Civil rights violation. Abuse of authority. Falsification of report. Not internal charges. Criminal. Carried by the full weight of the state. Reeves hired a lawyer that same night. Told him it was a misunderstanding. told him the woman had been uncooperative, told him the report reflected what he remembered. The lawyer listened, then asked one question. Did you know who she was before you detained her? Reeves said no. The lawyer closed his notepad. That's not going to matter. The trial didn't take long to conclude. The prosecution didn't lean on argument. They leaned on evidence. 3 phones, 1 body cam, 1 dispatch log, and 1 report that contradicted every single one of them. The jury watched the footage first, saw Lauren standing at her gate, remote in hand, calm, doing nothing that resembled what Reeves had written. Then they watched the body cam, heard his first words the moment he stepped out of the car, heard Lauren's responses, precise, legally accurate, heard the moment Webb suggested verification, heard 3 words that silenced the courtroom. We're past that. Then they read the report, word by word, and the gap between what Reeves had written and what 3 phones had captured was not a gap that memory could explain. It was deliberate. Written by a man who never believed anyone would look closely enough to notice. Reeves sat at that table and watched himself on a screen, watched his own walk. That certain, measured, never been wrong walk. Watched his eyes move past Lauren to the house, then back to her. Watched the moment he stopped listening and started deciding. And for the first time, he saw what everyone else in that courtroom saw. Not an officer doing his job. A man who had decided before he arrived. The prosecution closed with one question to the jury. At every point in this encounter, Officer Reeves had a choice. Verify or proceed. Listen or dismiss. Stop or commit. He made his choice every single time. They were now being asked to make theirs. The jury deliberated for less than a day. They didn't debate intent. They had watched intent on a screen. The verdict came back before the afternoon was out. Unanimous. On every count. Guilty. Reeves heard it and didn't move, just sat there. The certainty that had carried him through 9 years. Through 3 complaints. Through every encounter where nobody pushed back, draining out of him, in front of everyone. The judge looked at him before speaking. The judge looked at him before speaking. This was not a mistake, made under pressure. This was a series of deliberate decisions, made by someone who believed the consequences would never reach him. They had reached him today. 6 years. No suspension. No reduction. Badge stripped before he left the courthouse. Certification revoked the same. Afternoon. Pension terminated by end of week. 9 years, 3 complaints, 1 gate, gone. The civil case. Followed. $312,580 for civil rights violations, emotional distress, public humiliation, unlawful arrest. Every dollar a direct line back to one moment on Hawthorne Lane. And then the investigation turned its eye to the department itself, because the question nobody had answered, yet was the one that mattered most. How had 3 prior complaints all been buried without a single consequence? The answer reached beyond Reeves. Supervisors questioned, records subpoenaed, protocols dismantled and rebuilt from the ground up, mandatory verification protocols, supervisory accountability measures, independent oversight that didn't exist the night Reeves turned onto Hawthorne Lane, the neighbor's call, those 43 seconds, that single sentence. She doesn't look like she belongs there. Became training material for dispatch operators across the state, not because it was rare, but because it wasn't. Lauren returned home that same night. Same gate, same remote. She pressed the button once. The gate slid open. And this time, nobody questioned it. She didn't speak publicly. Didn't need to. The footage spoke. The court confirmed. The system corrected. Years later, the case is still studied, still referenced, still used in training rooms across the country, not because of her title, but because of what happened before anyone knew, when she was just a woman standing at a gate that belonged to her, and one man decided that wasn't possible. When she was asked years later what stayed with her most, she didn't mention the verdict, didn't reference the damages or the reforms. She said something far simpler, far heavier. She said something far simpler, far heavier. They had every chance to stop. At every single point, they had a choice. And they chose wrong. Every time. That choice, made on a quiet street, at an open gate, by a man certain he had never been wrong, ended a career, dismantled a system, and became the case that proved what happens when authority assumes too much and finds out far too late. Exactly who was standing at that gate. If this story reached you, it was supposed to. Cases like this don't always end this way. Most never see a courtroom. Most never find justice. But this one did. And if you believe accountability should never be the exception, subscribe now, so stories like this find you before they disappear. Hit that like button if Lauren's composure throughout this entire night earned your respect. Because the next story is already waiting, and it starts exactly the same way this one did, with an assumption, and someone who had no idea who they were dealing with.